Hello, everybody. Good morning. Welcome back to day 2 of our SEAL Spring Symposium. Yesterday, we had the opportunity. Oh, I forgot to introduce myself. I'm sorry. I'm Jocelyn Protopappas. I'm the manager of special projects at San Diego State University's Center for Excellence in Aging and Longevity. So that's also called SEAL. Yesterday, we got to kick off the day with the symposium with 2 film screenings and a civic engagement fair. Who had the opportunity to go to that yesterday? All right, look around. That's quite a few people. So either these folks yesterday had a good time or they were promised free coffee. And, we do respect both motivations. So I want to just touch quickly on the films that we saw yesterday because I don't know about the rest of you that went. I was really impacted by those films yesterday. Yes. The first film we watched was from the Glenner Center. It was Town Square, Reclaim the Past. Wait, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. I'm dropping the ball here. It was Recreate the Past. Oh my gosh, I'm the worst. Okay, sorry. It was called Town Square, Recreate the Past to Reclaim the Present. And this film was a behind the scenes view of how the Glenner Center was developed and created. But what I think that I really took away from that was the perspectives and the stories of the people that are living with Alzheimer's and dementia and their caregivers. This really gave us an insight into the ups and downs when people are living with the disease. The second film that we watched yesterday was Join or Die. And Join or Die is a documentary that reviews the work of a political scientist named Robert Putnam. And his work looked at the decline of civic engagement over the past decades and the impact that it has on our social and health and well-being. So these 2 films, they were intended to spark conversation about our themes for this event, which are innovation, connection, and longevity. Now, I just wanted to touch on the true impact of these films last night. I'm not a big film buff. If I see a movie, I can usually not remember it. But these films really stuck with me, and I know this because last night I was watching Survivor with my friends. We had a little catch-up date. And halfway through the episode, I found myself thinking about Dale from yesterday. Dale, if you didn't get to see the movie, is a gentleman who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. He was a little bit younger in age, and his wife was providing a lot of the history and the background in the story. And she said at one point, "I miss my husband. He was such a cool guy." And she's saying that, and she's standing there holding his hand. He's still alive. And that just really spoke to the challenges that she's facing in her life to see someone that she loves so dearly slowly disappearing. She said later in the movie, I just gave myself chills on the back of my neck there. Okay, she also said later in the movie, when someone gets diagnosed with Alzheimer's, it's not just them that gets diagnosed. It's their caregiver, it's their family, it's their friends, it's their community. All right, so I'm back to watching Survivor. I'm like, oh my God, get me out of this spiral. Then on the other hand, I start thinking about Join or Die. So last night to go to this Survivor screening, I had to skip a meeting with the women's club that I'm a part of. And something popped into my head. In the movie, they said something like, if you join a club, you decrease your risk of dying by 50%. Okay, so here I am missing a meeting for the club I'm part of. So on one hand, I'm thinking about poor Dale and oh my God, these caregivers out here, the challenges. And on the other hand, I'm thinking about my mortality. So those movies, I would say, were highly impactful. I really encourage any of you, if you didn't get the opportunity to attend yesterday, to figure out where you can see that Glenner movie. It is incredible. And on the other hand, make sure you can watch Join or Die. That one was really fantastic. These 3 themes didn't come out of nowhere. They're deeply rooted in our mission at SEAL, which is to bridge the world of academia at San Diego State with the business, government, and community in San Diego to address the emerging challenges in the field of aging. These 3 ideas are also rooted in our 5 focus areas at SEAL, including longevity, age-friendly initiatives, workforce development, research, and policy. But not only are these 3 themes in these overarching pieces at SEAL, they're also in our day-to-day work. These 3 themes pop up when I'm brainstorming with my team about ways to support and lift up caregivers. They're present when we are talking about new tech in the field of aging that helps support older adults. And they're also present when we're nerding out about pilot initiatives that we could launch. So with that being said, today we have another day packed with exciting events to continue to promote these 3 ideas. After I'm done with our welcoming remarks here, I'm going to introduce you to our keynote speaker. We will have a break at 9:45. I encourage you during our breaks to please step outside and engage with our exhibitors. We have a lot of different people here. We're excited for you to engage with them, so please do that. We'll have our second panel discussion around 10 o'clock with a break after that. Our second panel will be around 11. And today we have a very special guest closing us out for the whole event. If you'd like to follow along in today's event, you can scan the QR code. This will give you a program for the day. Before we get to our keynote speaker, I just want to thank our premier sponsor, Front Porch. Front Porch is a nonprofit organization dedicated to empowering individuals to live connected and fulfilled lives through community and innovation. Their mission to inspire and build community by cultivating meaningful relationships and experiences that respond creatively to changing needs resonates deeply with us here at SEAL. So huge thank you to Front Porch for making this a possibility, a place where we can connect, and also I can share my challenges with watching Survivor last night. Okay, so, all right. Now, on to the exciting part. I am very excited to have the opportunity to introduce our keynote speaker today, Sarah Steenhausen. She's a seasoned advocate and visionary in the field of aging. I had the pleasure to watch Sarah speak at a recent national conference about the Master Plan on Aging, and I can tell you that whether she's driving policy forward or engaging with her fellow changemakers, Sarah brings a rare mix of energy, clarity, and bold thinking that makes you sit up straight in your chair. So get that posture ready, folks. Okay. She currently serves as the Deputy Director of the Division of Policy, Research, and Equity at the California Department of Aging, where she helps lead the charge on California's Master Plan on Aging, working across departments and with stakeholders to drive bold, equity-centered systems change for older adults, people with disabilities, and of course, those family caregivers we've been talking so much about. Her career spans over 2 decades of impact, from her early days as a consultant to the Senate Subcommittee on Aging and Long-Term Care to leadership roles at the California Health and Human Services Agency and the SCAN Foundation. She holds a master's in gerontology from USC and a bachelor's in history from Connecticut College. Please help me in giving a warm welcome to Sarah Steenhausen.
Well, thank you so much, Jocelyn. I think that was like the best warm-up intro that I have been to. I mean, that was fantastic. What a pleasure it is to be here today. Thank you so much to Steve for the invitation, to Michelle for making it happen. It was great to meet you today, Jocelyn, and chatting with Jacob as well. What an amazing organization and initiative SEAL is. Before I get started, I was really hoping to get a sense of who's in the room. So I know Joe's here from AARP. Anybody want to raise their hand, say what organization they're with or who they're here? Yes. Long-term care ombudsman, great. Seniors Community Foundation. Great. Seniors Community Foundation, yes. Wonderful. Visiting Angels, yes. Yes, great to see you here. Okay. Partner in Aging. Okay, wonderful. Nice, wonderful. Caregivers. Great, I love this. What's San Diego Oasis? Great, love it. Yes, you right there. Yeah, white yeah, you first, and then right behind you. Oh, love St. Paul's. I did a site visit with them a few years ago. It was fantastic. Elder help. Oh, good, awesome. Serving seniors. I'm going to Paul's retirement tomorrow. All right, see you there. Awesome. IHSS, we got everybody here. Yes, way back. Same, IHSS. Okay, yes, ma'am. Yes, you. What's stepping higher? Oh, I love it. Fantastic. Okay, we'll do 3 more. Yes. Great. Wonderful. Child and family development. Fabulous. Okay, one more in the back. Yes, you. Glasses. Wonderful. Well, thank you for supporting today's event. What this tells me is what SEAL is doing is bringing community together. And this is exactly what we need, not only at the community level, but it's how you make change. And it's how you really can address the longstanding issues that impact older adults and our people with disabilities and caregivers. So I'm going to be talking to you about leveraging the power of collaboration and how that is really, we're trying to reflect that in the master plan for aging. Next slide, please. So what I want to talk to you about, I think you all could talk about the context, which is our aging population, but I like to kind of start there to give a little bit of a background on what led to the development and the call for a master plan for aging. Then I really want to give you a little bit of a background on what do we see as the key pillars of system change in long-term services and supports, because that will kind of help you see where the main work at the state and local level is that we see that needs to happen to really change and reform our system. Then I want to talk a bit about some of the partnerships that drive the master plan for aging and just some examples of the progress we've seen. And then I want to talk about how do we actually hold ourselves accountable? And what does this really mean when we are facing such uncertain times today? And how can we really think about the value of a plan in light of a very challenging time that we're facing as a state and as a country? And then finally, I would love any questions or comments throughout, please. I want to make this engaging. I know I don't have as much time. Time check though, Steve, we started a little late. Can I have 5 extra minutes? So I was supposed to end at 9:45, is 9:50? Okay, we'll just stay here all day and I'll get everybody falling asleep by the end of the day. How's that? All right, woohoo. Yeah. No, I've had some presentations I've had to learn from where I literally look in the audience and you see people nodding off and I'm like, that's my fault. I say that's my fault. If I see anybody nodding off, I'm inviting you up here with me. So, okay, next slide. So the context in aging California. This is not a surprise to any of you, but if we go to the next slide, what I find fascinating, we have this incredible research team. I know Steve knows our team, Ross Lallian, who heads up our Aging and Disability Research Partnership, but they've been able to pull together some amazing stats for us. If you look at the population of the 60-plus population between 1980 to 2060, there are parts of the state where we have over 400% increase in our older adult population, and that's in Sacramento. But you also can see that in Southern California, it's over almost 400% increase. So rapidly aging population. And what's interesting about 1980 is 1980s are when a lot of our very innovative home and community-based services really started to flourish. And we got the funding through different, federal Older Americans Act, and when it was passed a little in the 70s, late 60s. But a lot of the home and community-based programs started emerging in the 80s. But what happened was they weren't really thinking, by 2060, we're going to have, a massive increase in our population. Not only will it be increasing, but it's also going to be increasingly diverse, which makes us very rich as a state in terms of the cultural representation. But we also we didn't think about how do we make sure that we're culturally responsive in the services and supports that we provide. Additionally, many of the programs and services, we heard today from long-term care ombudsman. I saw HICAP there today, which, by the way, that was my first job out of school, HICAP community education. And that's what got me interested in this whole field. So yay, HICAP. And then you have Meals on Wheels funded through, Older Americans Act. You have Adult Protective Services, separate funding stream, which has had a very tenuous funding history, right? All of these programs and services are funded differently. There's a lot of fragmentation in the system. And oftentimes the system hasn't been built around the needs of the person. So as we see the increase in this population, we have to think thoughtfully about how we better deliver services to meet the needs of the people we serve. Next slide. What also became very apparent is that as people age, they're becoming higher rates of poverty. So for example, those who are up to 138% of federal poverty level, between 60 to 64, that represents about 14% of that population. But by the time they're 75 years or older, it's 22% of the population. So you can see, unfortunately, as a lot of people age, they become increasingly lacking the income that they need to age with dignity and independence. So this is a really critical thing for us to consider. And all of these factors are what led Governor Newsom to say, you know, when he came into office, he himself was a caregiver for his father who had Alzheimer's. And he said, if I'm struggling to pull together the resources and the figuring out how to navigate this complicated system, and I'm feeling so alone in this whole journey, how must people who have, you know, who are isolated in this system, how much they feel? And we need to do something about it. We need a master plan for aging. Next slide, please. So it was very exciting for me to see this all come about, because I was, you know, at that time with the SCAN Foundation in 2019, when he issued his executive order calling for a master plan for aging. But I will say, the executive order was released, but he had committed to doing a plan like 6 months prior when he had gone into office. He actually signed a pledge that said, yes. You know, there were a lot of advocacy around this. Governor Newsom, will you stand with seniors? Will you commit to a master plan for aging? He said, sure, I will. But then I will say it was crickets for the first few months. And there was some concern in the community that, will we actually see this come about? And then, yes, in June, we had the release of the executive order. But then it was like, well, how is this all going to happen? They called on the Department of Aging to kind of facilitate it and advance it. But guess what? Department of Aging at that time was under a lot of change, and they had no resources to do it. So if you don't, I know that all of you know here, it's very hard to do a plan without resources, right? So fortunately, the foundation partners came together, pooled resources, and developed this really innovative memorandum of understanding with the state that said, we will support the development of a master plan for aging so that you can have the policies support, the research support, the communications that you need, the stakeholder engagement to make a meaningful plan. If it weren't for that partnership, I don't think we would have the plan that we have today. So Governor Newsom's leadership was absolutely critical, because not only did he call on the Department of Aging, he called on the Health and Human Services Agency to work with and provide the leadership to the Department of Aging, but he also called for a whole of government approach. A meaningful master plan is not about one program or the other. It's not just say, oh, let's fund in-home supportive services, or let's fund, you know, Meals on Wheels. Because guess what? People don't live in silos. We have to think about housing, transportation, veteran services, employment, labor, you name it. So what he did is he said, we're going to have a cabinet work group on aging that demonstrates leadership in this space and helps inform the development of that master plan for aging. That partnership was also critical. So, between 2019 and 2021, January of 2021, there was significant stakeholder involvement, where the stakeholders didn't just come and sit around the table and complain. They actually, there was a whole report written and submitted to the state about what their recommendations were for a master plan for aging. And what was really important is the state said, stakeholders, let's pretend you're all the stakeholders. You all have to get together and you all have to agree on the highest priorities, and then submit a report to us, and we'll consider that as we develop the master plan. So can you imagine what it's like sitting? I was on the stakeholder advisory committee that focused on long-term services and supports, and there were about 30 people on it. And I'll tell you, getting consensus on that whole group was something else. At certain times, I was worried that World War III would break out, but it ended up actually driving everybody a lot closer. And we came out with a really amazing report. And all of this stuff is still available online. And it really did inform the master plan. But guess what happened in between while the stakeholders were working to develop their recommendations? What happened between 2019 and 2021? Oh, COVID. I forgot. Right. So guess what happened? All of a sudden in June of 2020, the state said, okay, we're putting a pause on the master plan. And so stakeholders were really worried that this meant they're not going to do it. But actually what happened was that work and the stakeholder engagement and the state involvement up until that point had been such a powerful partnership that it elevated the issues that we needed to pay attention to during COVID. And the COVID experience informed the state's understanding of the issues that impact this population. So it was a devastating time, but guess who was hardest hit during COVID? Older adults, people with disabilities. So that shined such an important light. And then you saw, funding coming from the federal government as a result of the COVID challenges, that the state was able to direct to the programs and services that serve this population because they saw and they learned from that experience, and the master plan informed it all the way. So when the plan was released in 2021, actually on January 6th, 2021, I'd like to say that was a good thing that happened on January 6, 2021. And that's the only thing I think of when I think of January 6th. It really is focused on a whole of person approach. So looking at goal 1, housing, and ensuring not just housing, but transportation, age and disability friendly communities throughout the state. How can we ensure that our communities are ready? Second is reimagining healthcare to be more responsive to the needs of the whole person, rather than, again, the siloed approach, looking across the continuum. Goal 3, really important, inclusion and equity, not isolation. This speaks to a lot of the work that SEAL's doing, and what Jocelyn talked about the importance of joining groups and not isolating ourselves as we age. So that's a big focus throughout the MPA. 4, very importantly, caregiving that works. How can we best support our paid and unpaid caregiver workforce? This is where we have such a great need in our state to ensure that as people age, they have the workforce needed to provide the care and services. And goal 5, of course, this issue of affording aging. How can we ensure that people don't impoverish themselves, become homeless, or lack food security that they need to age with dignity and independence? So within each of these goals, there are a number of initiatives. The first plan had 132 initiatives. Then we update the plan every 2 years. I'll talk a bit about the importance of a living document. We updated it in 2023 for 2023-24. There were 95 initiatives, and then we just updated it this January, where there were 80. We now have 81 initiatives, and I'll talk a bit about how we approach that and what informs the plan. Next slide, please. So this here is a picture of the cabinet that is, we have contacts across all of these agencies that we work with to inform the master plan. So again, it's really important to have this whole of government approach that guides it. And it's really up to us at the Department of Aging to facilitate the relationships. We can always do better. So there's certain agencies like Labor and Workforce Development and Housing, Business Consumer Services and Housing. We have very great working relationships with them. And then there's others where I'm like, all right, we need to do more to establish those relationships and do more across the space for the MPA. Next slide. So as I said, every 2 years we update the MPA, and that's because, does the world stay stagnant constantly? No. We're constantly having to pivot and update, refresh, and our stakeholders play a big role in that. So again, we'll talk a bit about that, but stakeholders played a big role in informing the MPA, and they continue to play a very big role in advancing the MPA. And that doesn't mean they're always happy. That's the challenge. I know that our colleagues in government understand what that's like. You can't please everybody all the time, but at least we have a transparent process that we're working towards. Next slide. So I want to talk a bit about we have 5 bold goals. We have 81 initiatives. Now that can easily be lost. So what are the key areas that we're really focusing on that are most critical to address across these 5 bold goals? And that's what I'm going to touch on right now. Next slide. So let's think about the person. for a moment. Let's give the example of the gentleman that you spoke about, Dale. Was that his name? Dale from the movie, who is impacted by Alzheimer's, and his wife as well as his caregiver. So Dale and his wife might have had a very hard time initially upon his diagnosis, because oftentimes people struggle to access the information they need to make informed choices. As I said, we have a very fragmented system. Navigating the system, simply knowing where to start, is challenging. Doctors, upon his diagnosis, I am betting that their doctor didn't necessarily say, oh, call Aging and Independent Services and they'll set you up, which they would, because they're incredible in the work they do. But people don't know what area agencies on aging are, so they don't really know where to start. We have to do a better job of streamlining access to information and services. So we have this whole initiative around developing what we're calling a no wrong door system, which is ensuring that we have a platform that's consumer facing, statewide website that connects people to the same information across the state. And then second, the goal is to have live help so that you can actually talk to somebody with one number. We have certain, San Diego's doing a great job in this space, but we want to make it so the whole state's doing a great job. That's aspirational. We're planning for it. It's a resource issue, but we're trying to get there. So let's say we get to a place where the whole state looks like San Diego and we have a much more streamlined way of accessing services. Well, that's great, but guess what? What if you don't have a service to streamline to, right? So we know across the state that there's waiting lists, there's lack of funding, if you live in a service desert in a rural area, you might not even be able to get services. So we're doing a comprehensive analysis of our home and community-based service system across Medi-Cal and non-Medi-Cal. The Medi-Cal report was released earlier this year, and we're releasing our non-Medi-Cal report to look at, it's kind of wonky, but where are the service deserts and where do we need to build out capacity in the system? And from that, building a roadmap for how we increase access to services so that somebody like Dale, if let's say he needed adult daycare, but there were no available services in the area, how can we build out those services so Dale can go to the adult daycare that he needs? Third, workforce. Does anybody think we have challenges with workforce? Oh, no, we're done. Okay, that's good. No, we do. We need more caregivers, direct care workers. That in-home supportive services is growing, and it's an amazing program. But we need more people to be drawn to this profession. It's so important. So we need to value our direct care workers, we need to pay them, and we need to train them. And we also need to value, train, and support our unpaid family caregivers, which in the state of California, there's approximately somewhere between 6 to 7 million by some estimates. And I know SEAL has done a lot to support both the paid and unpaid workforce, and we'll talk a bit about how that's looked in the MPA. And then finally, the issue of long-term services and supports and how we finance our care. Has anybody here struggled to pay for a family member's, let's say they need in-home care, personal care, if you don't qualify for Medi-Cal, or you need to, a loved one needs to move to assisted living or independent living. It's expensive, and people often impoverish themselves for it. And this is tremendously problematic because we don't want everybody impoverishing themselves, going on Medi-Cal, and then ending up in a nursing home. It doesn't make sense fiscally, and it doesn't make sense from a policy perspective. So we're doing we have an amazing process underway right now. A $5 million long-term services and supports financing initiative that's doing kind of a cross-system analysis of what are some of the policies that we can promote to help people pay for long-term services and supports. And then Joe Garbanzo here from AARP also sat separately he served on the Long-Term Care Insurance Task Force, which came out with comprehensive recommendations on what a public benefit could look like for financing long-term services and supports. I would say, from the administration's perspective, they don't have a position on that work, but what I can say is that there's not one silver bullet to solve this whole problem. We need a multi-pronged approach, and we have to be committed to it at the state and at the federal level, because this can't be done on a state-by-state basis. So we have a lot of work ahead in that space as well. Next slide. So I talked about the importance of partnerships. I just want to give you some examples of how our stakeholders and our foundation partners are such critical, and our local partners are really driving the MPA. Next slide. So we have the benefit of having 6 advisory committees, all ranging from our Impact Advisory Committee, which is our oversight board, our Aging and Disability Research Partnership that Steve sits on to inform our data and how we measure progress in the master plan. We have a committee focused on equity that elevates equity throughout the MPA. We have a Disability and Aging Community Living Advisory Committee, which focuses on the needs of home and community-based services, housing, transportation across the system, and elevates recommendations in that space. We have Elder and Disability Justice Coordinating Council to really look at ensuring that there is justice throughout for all older adults and people with disabilities, fighting abuse, neglect throughout our system. And then finally, a committee that is focused on a range of issues impacting people with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. We are also standing up an Aging and Disability Lived Experience Advisory Board, because what we want to do is not get stuck in our policy wonky talk. We want to have everything focused on people like Dale and his wife who need services, who are struggling today. If we forget the person's voice, we're not doing a good job. So it's very easy to get stuck in the policy program funding fights that happen. With a Lived Experience Advisory Board, we did a comprehensive search to find real people that didn't know all this stuff and that just could tell us the real experiences they face. And we want to use that advisory board to inform the work of all of our committees as well. So we're super excited. I think that the members will be announced in the next month or two. And then we anticipate having the first meeting of that sometime before the fall. So, and then we hope to uplift all the stories that we learn from that work as well. So we bring together our stakeholders every 2 years for a big in-person convening in Sacramento, where they present to us their key policy priorities every 2 years. And again, it's that whole theme of having to get the stakeholders together to come to agreement. And then when they present us their policy priorities based on the work that they've done in their committees, we take those recommendations to inform the next iteration of the master plan. There's a lot of expectation setting throughout this because, as you know, if stakeholders recommend something, we can't necessarily always do it. So again, this gets to the point, you can't always make everybody happy, but we try very, very much to listen and to do what we can with our state partners. And that's what led to the recent round of initiatives in the master plan. Next slide. As I said, we're really fortunate to have this amazing Master Plan for Aging Foundation partnership. With these foundations here, some are no longer on the partnership because they were instrumental in helping launch it, but it's I just want to recognize Archstone Foundation, Gilbert Foundation, Irvine Health Foundation, which is no longer in existence, but they were one of the original founders, Meta Fund, Scan Foundation, San Diego Foundation, the Smith Charitable Trust, and the West Foundation. All these entities are what were the initial group that helped launch the Master Plan for Aging. Since the time of the establishment of this fund, we have leveraged over $4 million in investments that have really helped us at the state level on investments in initiatives and in policy and research work that we couldn't have done without their support. Next slide. Really important too, I know SEAL has been very active in local age and disability friendly action plans. This is so important because while the state can have its own master plan, we really look to the local levels to do their own planning because your needs are unique for what you need to do to address the needs of your older adults. So we did have some grants where we had about 20 local levels that are advancing local age and disability action plans. We have a learning community that we've established, but there's many other cities and counties that have done their own age-friendly plans and are part of the AARP network. I know SEAL, you did one as well, right, Steve? And 10 of them. Okay. Well, you've supported about 10 of them. So they're the experts in this. Really important to have that local commitment. Next slide. So I just want to give a very high level examples of some of the progress we've seen, and show you where you can go to learn more about the MPA and some of the other progress. Next slide. So we were fortunate through the American, the ARPA Act, American, I can't even think of what it stands for. What's that? Rescue Plan Act. Thank you. I'm like, woo. I just call it ARPA. Tremendous infusion of funds during the time of COVID to, again, they saw that older adults, people with disabilities were dying in nursing homes, and that we needed people in the community, and we needed to increase our infrastructure in the community and our capacity to serve people throughout the system. And this was incredible. I mean, the investments across the state to address the needs of this population were incredible. California Department of Aging, among other resources, we did get $150 million for a one-time investment in caregiver training, stipend, and incentives. And we called that the Cal Grows program. I will note, though, that was the biggest grant or investment we've ever gotten for one-time funds from the federal government. That's fantastic, but you know what would have been great is if we had 10 years to spend it, or 15. Congress just was like, spend all this money in 2 years. I mean, that's dangerous, frankly, because it takes time to plan and be thoughtful. Regardless, we'll take it, right? We were like, heck yeah, let's do this. And that's when I started at the Department of Aging. I was like, what should we call this? And we came up with Cal Grows, and it was really exciting, but it was also for our grantees. Steve was one of them. It was a little bit of a learning experience for us. And I know there were some, stops and starts along the way, but we got to a really good place with this. As a result of this initiative, we trained over 33,000 direct care workers and family caregivers. We paid out over $30 million in stipends and incentives for our direct care workers. We had 76 grantees across the state that offered trainings in 10 languages. That's phenomenal. We far surpassed our goal. We had hoped to train 14,000. That was our ultimate goal. Oh, if we could get 14,000 people trained. We got to 33,000. And next slide, please. I want to do a spotlight on SEAL. Their program, San Diego Caregiver Connections, was one of our amazing grantees. They did a fabulous job. Steve and Michelle, when they put together the application, they said, yeah, it'd be great if between this grant and another grant through the Department of Healthcare Access and Information, we can serve between 200 to 600 people. Let's see. I want to hear from somebody. Guess how many people you think they served as a result of these funds, or people they trained. Guess. Anybody? Almost. Steve? Over 7,000 people trained. We didn't even have that updated number. Our number said 2,000. So I'm going to go back to the office and say, guess what? It was actually 7,000. So what stuck out to me that Michelle said is that while they had paid stipends for the direct care workers, the direct care workers wanted to take even more beyond what the stipends provided for. Caregivers want the training and the support to help them do the jobs that they are so committed to doing. So we're trying to figure out ways to sustain the caregiver training and access to this information so that community partners can leverage the trainings of our grantees. And on our website, our Cal Grows website, we have a number of free trainings available for anybody, and we're going to continue to build that out. So shout out to SEAL for the work in this space. This is just one example of one of the successes of our master plan for aging. And if you go to the next slide, I want to talk a bit about accountability in the master plan, and then I'll wrap it up. Next slide. So I encourage you, if you want to see how we're doing with the master plan for aging, please visit our data dashboard for aging. Anything you want related to the master plan is at mpa.aging.ca.gov. Our research team has put together a pretty incredible dashboard of how we kind of look across the 5 bold goals at indicators of progress. Next slide, please. We also have an implementation tracker at mpaprogress.org. This goes through literally every single initiative and shows you what we've done across each of the initiatives, or what we haven't done, frankly. And through every year, you can see where it is and what the kind of status is of all that work. So we're really trying to be transparent in our work. Next slide. So with all of this, we're very proud. We also have an annual report that we submit to the legislature that highlights key accomplishments. You can also get that on our website if you want to learn more about other stories in addition to the one I told you about SEAL and the work of our workforce initiative. We are facing very challenging times right now. When I started at the Department of Aging in 2022, it was a feast. And, we had resources to do stuff to implement the change. And that was quite a responsibility and so important to take those times and those opportunities. But we always know, unfortunately, at the state level, it's like feast or famine. And then 2 years later, we face like huge budget deficits. I mean, I won't go on to our whole budget process, but there are challenges. But not only are we facing challenges at the state level, but we're in a time of uncertainty at the federal level as well. So we are trying to figure out, what do we do in these times and how can we maintain that hope for our bold goals. So next slide, please. I wanted to just reiterate the importance of a plan. A lot of people have said to me now, well, Sarah, you know what? If we see a lack of progress in the master plan for aging, that means it's failed. If we see challenges and cuts, or if we see, pulling back on some initiatives, and I'm like, I don't think so, because the power of a plan, I've been totally transformed in my thinking, because initially when we talked about doing a plan, I'm like, oh, it's just gonna be a report. Somebody will write a plan. Anybody could write a plan. We just write a plan. Oh, yay, look, we wrote a plan. Great. Right? And that is true many of the time. But when you have a plan that's backed by leadership, that's backed by local support, that's backed by stakeholders, that's backed by public and private partners, that is so powerful. Why? Because it fosters communication. It elevates the issues that matter to this population so that people are talking about it. So that when you're in a challenging time, you still are thinking of that population and know that you need to do better when times change. It is a plan that is a living document, is able to adapt to these disruptions. So we're going to be able to pivot, and we are. We're finding opportunities in times of crisis. Doesn't mean we don't recognize that the times are tough, but we have to constantly pivot. Third, it improves our resiliency. So if we can get through this in these difficult times and come out okay, it shows the value of the planning. So we have to keep staying resilient in the work we do. We need to continue to clarify our goals and message those. And ultimately, all of this leads to better decision-making at the state and federal level if we can be successful in our work. But it can't be done without all of us. Next slide, please. So finding opportunity, I really like this quotation about you have to go where this puck, okay, you have to skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it's been. So if we get stuck constantly thinking about what was, we'll miss the puck, we'll lose the game. If we are thinking, where are things going, and that's what we need to do, then we're going to be in a better space. So an example of that, next slide, is the Behavioral Health Services Act. Our partners at Aging and Independent Services have been really amazing in terms of leveraging resources through what used to be the Mental Health Services Act and now has been renamed Behavioral Health Services Act. There's going to be more opportunities if our local levels are engaged and advocating for the needs of older adults to ensure that the counties are supporting this population and their tremendous needs for behavioral health services and support, such as fighting depression, loneliness, anxiety. Highest suicide risk is among older adults, highest rate of suicides across the state. We have a lot of work to do in this space, but we just had a webinar where Aging and Independent Services was part of our presenters. We're learning from those local levels that have achieved in this space. There's a website on our cda.aging.gov. We have a page dedicated to this. I encourage you to look at how you can plug in to the Behavioral Health Services Act. There's going to be resources forthcoming over the next few years. This is a funding stream that won't go away. It's actually, a state initiative. Sorry, it's a proposition that automatically has a funding source. So it's incumbent on all of us to get those resources for older adults. So next slide, please. The 4 Ps I wanted to go through, what we can take away from today. Okay. Thank you. Partner, partner, partner. I think we've learned that value of it, and you're all demonstrating that. The next is to participate. So, for example, looking for those new opportunities, getting to the table for the Behavioral Health Services Act. 3, promoting the needs of older adults, people with disabilities, and caregivers, like you do. Shared messaging, constantly getting attention focused on the needs of this population. And then finally, just be persistent. Steve is very persistent in the work he does. That's why he's been so successful. And I know that you all are very successful in the work you do because you care so much about this population. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. That was wonderful. I just wanted to highlight that it's not often that we get to be in these spaces where everybody is so passionate about aging and that this means so much. Sometimes when I hear speeches like that, I'm like, you are a rock star and celebrity, but it's just your job and that rules. So I do want to encourage all of you to take this opportunity to build the energy, momentum, and connection, to talk to the people around you and to go out and talk to those exhibitors I was just talking about. So we are going to take a 15-minute break. I know we're a little behind schedule. Throw that agenda out the window. Good things take time. I just want to say thank you to our hospitality sponsors today. CCL Hospitality Group, they're outside today. Go chat with them. They're wonderful. And the College of Health and Human Services. I'm an alumni. I can speak to the wonderfulness. And our dean is here if you want to bother her. So thank you all. We'll see you back in 15 minutes.